are sure this is done. And then let's start with a very brief introduction. This will be really just 3 minutes on the Better Incubation project. So just to be sure we are all aligned, why we are here. This is a European funded project funded by the EaSI program, DG Employment. It's actually a 2 years program that started in 2021, and it's powered by 3 networks, EVPA, together with EBN and Impact Up. The objective of this program is to foster inclusive and social entrepreneurship in Europe by mobilizing and empowering mainstream business support organizations, so incubators and accelerators, with capacities to effectively help social enterprises and potential entrepreneurs from underrepresented groups, among them categories like migrants, refugees, women, people with disabilities, and others. So the objective is really to make these businesses grow, found a better environment for them to strive, and to better connect with social investors. And this is why we are here today together to discuss about this relation and actually collaboration between social investors and business support organizations. As you see, the activities of the Better Incubation program started with a huge capacity building component, with the idea to provide business support organizations with capacities on how to better support social enterprises. But then now there is another whole series of activities that really focus on the collaboration dimension. So this is why we have now launched this Switch Pitch series. It's a series of conversation between social investors and impact-driven business support organizations that can really give insights and share the mindset that actually should help to build a better collaboration, to increase pipeline building when it comes to support social and underrepresented entrepreneurs. So I'm happy to leave the floor to my colleague Martijn, who is the EVPA lead for Benelux and the also Impact Funds initiative. So he will coordinate and moderate the meeting of today and introduce our 2 speakers of the day. Thank you, Martijn. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. I think we reached the first goal of today after seeing the registrations. We're in double digits, so that's a good start for today. Since we were with a small group, I'd like to propose to keep it interactive and to keep the conversation open. So that's always the advantage, I think, if you're with a small group of people, that you have the opportunity to ask questions and not just to listen to me asking questions. If you have any questions during the presentation in a bit, please also share them in the chat. We can take them along from the chat as well. But definitely, I will open up to the floor as well later. As Sarah already said, my name is Martijn Blom. I lead the Impact Funds initiative within EVPA. I actually have a background in impact investment. For those that don't know me, I was one of the fund managers of a fund called Hivos Impact Investments, and before that, I was active as an investor myself in the world of business angels, and one of the founders of the Investors Club in the Netherlands. And now, usually, I don't go that far back when introducing myself in these sessions, but this time, when I have the honor and pleasure to announce Jan Verkooijen, I need to go back that far, because Jan and I go back that far. Jan was one of the first members of the Investors Club when we set that up back in the days. And one of the reasons for me and my business partner at the time, Gert van Veldhuis and Keith Wallace, to set up the Investors Club was also to bring on board more experienced investors a bit closer to us, so we could learn from them and learn while doing, actually. And I'm proud to say that Jan was one of the first mentors in that for me back in the days, to introduce me to this crazy world. So Jan is also one of the co-founders of World Startup, the organization that will be presenting today. I'll not be handing over to Jan, but I will be handing over to Aditya, who I also got to got to know through Jan and through the World Startup and through the other founders of the World Startup. Aditya told me in a preparation meeting that, like me, he wears many hats, but like to be introduced in this session as the Investment Associate Officer for World Startup. And with that, because I could spend a lot of time trying to introduce World Startup to you, but I think it's much better done by Aditya himself. So with that, I'd like to hand over to him. So please go ahead, Aditya.
Thank you very much, Martijn. It's good to be wearing a couple of hats. I think I'm not wearing as many as you, because sometimes it's also a difficult job in that. I'm an investment associate officer at World Startup. I'm also handling a couple of our sourcing projects. I've been with World Startup for over 7 years now. Very fortunate to be the first employee of the company from then onwards. And since then, I've been also the program director of an initiative called the Capital Tour, which is a matchmaking initiative between investors and entrepreneurs. And we do this in an informal setting.
Sorry, those that are not speaking have to actually turn off their audio. I don't think I can do it myself. Okay, I found a way.
Okay, I think Sarah, the person just muted themselves, so that's all right. I have a few slides to share, talking a little bit about World Startup and how collaboration is ingrained into everything that we do. And we'll also go into a couple of the use cases of different assignments that we did, how we brought in collaboration and how it was actually helpful in real life practice. And I believe, Martijn, how do you want to do this? We save the questions for later.
Yes, please go ahead with the presentation. You can share yours. Yes, it's great. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, so World Startup is a collective, and our main objective is to catalyze positive growth. Here you can see a couple of the companies that are part of our collective, and we have a few more of them that we are adding every month here on. And in the background, you can also see one of our founders who actually, their company, they make delicious pasta made out of cricket-based protein. And so some problems that we're trying to solve, and I'm sure all of you here in the call would recognize as well, but these are the ones that we try to focus on. We think not enough people are starting impact-driven businesses. Now, some of you might raise an eyebrow when I'm saying this. There was a recent survey that was done in the Netherlands. What kind of jobs or careers people would like to have? And apparently, most people wanted to be a civil servant, working for the government. While we see more and more entrepreneurs starting impact-driven businesses, we would like to see a lot more happening in this space. And impact not as a byproduct, but impact as the main focus. So that's what you're talking about. I think we also recognize that too many startups fail, or they take way too long to be successful or sustainable for themselves. Something that we all recognize is also that all the critical resources that we need for entrepreneurs to be successful are gravitating towards a couple of regions, a couple of cities, the usual suspects, the Silicon Valleys or the Londons or the Amsterdams. And this is also something that we are trying to tackle. And a lot of people, a lot of organizations like to work within their own boundaries. Now, this is a good conversation to have within this setting, within the EVPA members and the EVN network, because we are trying to not do that, right? But we all recognize that this is happening. Our solution is to create a long-term support system for entrepreneurs. Previously, we've been doing programs that are meant for 3 months, 6 months programs. we've come to realize that to see real value for these entrepreneurs to realize that it needs longer time. So most programs that we do are with a focus of 3 years. And so we're really trying to go along with entrepreneurs in those journeys, because what we recognize is also, if you do a 3-month program, perhaps what comes out of the program is that an understanding that the business needs to pivot. And then, well, you need a whole different program to support them after that 3 months. So we moved away from that particular system. What we also do is work in an innovation hubs model. There are a couple of focus areas that we have, including climate, energy, and urban developments, but also food, etc. We create hubs, innovation hubs around these teams. And we engage all different kinds of stakeholders that are active in those specific hubs. And we try to tackle challenges in those specific hubs with entrepreneurs as the central point. Yeah. And creating international cooperations. We've also learned very recently, actually, a couple of weeks ago, we learned from the RBO, which is the entrepreneurship wing of the Dutch government, that we have provided the most number of startup visas for international entrepreneurs. And this is actually possible because we are working with over 30 different hubs all over the world to enable this influx of entrepreneurs towards the Netherlands. On the other side, we're also doing several different programs to facilitate them for international expansion as well. What we also believe is keeping the resources a bit decentralized. We don't want to be the organization that has the solutions for everything, that has the trainings or the access to market or capital. We want to work together with other organizations. Perhaps they're even better at doing this in their own local settings. So we want to work together with them. This is actually the very first time we're sharing this version of our mission, vision, and values publicly. So I'm actually happy to share this. Also, it'd be good to hear what you think about this. Our mission is to create an inclusive and regenerative economy for change makers. By inclusivity, we're not just talking about everybody of a different gender or sexual or orientation, but we're also talking about entrepreneurs from different regions. We want entrepreneurs from Uganda or Zambia or Nicaragua to have a certain level of access to resources that we have here in the Netherlands. Not that we need the exact same thing, but we try to understand what is needed over there and try to provide that. And what we're also focusing on is a regenerative economy. So not always trying to invent the wheel, taking time to properly understand the problems and the situations, and working on a base that is already existing rather than restarting from ground zero. And our vision, so this ties in very well with the theme for today, is that we believe in the power of collaboration and the beauty of equality. Here you see some of our values. I also have a slide going a little bit deeper into these things. Now, the first one is actually much harder in practice than said, which is we try to always keep the entrepreneurs in our portfolio or the entrepreneurs that we try to work with first. So all the decisions that we make, we think about, is this in the best interest of these entrepreneurs? And that is actually a very difficult thing, as you can imagine. And caring together, so not just with different organizations, but also to give you an example, within our own portfolio, we are creating a validation fund, actually. So our new model that we're working on is called the Altitude program for companies that are in the validation phase. The companies that are working on this model usually give us 2%, about 2% of their equity. and 2% of their equity goes into a shared fund that is that's an entity of culmination of 2% of all the companies in the LTG program, basically. So they have a shared interest in each other to be successful. And in the future, we are also going to introduce a model where they can benefit from things as getting loans from that validation fund and other things as well. Yeah, but the main thing is that they care together. They want to find opportunities to work together and care together. Celebrating life, we surely take time out of our daily life to do this. And the ecosystem equality is something that I spoke about in the previous slide. So these are our 4 values that we try to breathe in and out every day. These are some of our services. Now, I will not go into the services itself. I believe they're self-understandable. We have been fortunate to work with different clients and partners over the past 7.5, 8 years. What I want to give you is an idea of a mix that we are working together with some bigger corporates like T-Mobile. We are working with a larger consortium of organizations like here Greenport, which is a consortium for horti-tech related companies in the Netherlands. We're working with NGOs like WWF to help manage a fund for them. But we also do innovation programs just within organizations like FMO. And we also work with several different governmental organizations as well. Now, yeah, here's the case studies I was referring to or alluding to in the beginning of the presentation. I picked 4, but there are several different more that we do. The first one is a program that we just finished. It's an international expansion program that we did together with the city of The Hague. Now, this was meant for 24 companies around this region that were ready for an international expansion. And there were specific countries that we were focusing on. We were focusing on Belgium, Germany, UK, and Sweden in this current program. Now, the program itself was organized by the city of The Hague, but it was done in a really nice collaborative manner. And that is something that I'll spend a minute speaking about. So the setup of the program itself was done by creating a partner board. And there were 10 different organizations that were responsible for setting up the framework, the program itself, and the decision-making of this entire program. The Hague itself was facilitating the entire process. While startup, we were brought into the program to help with sourcing the right companies, but also assessing if they are the best fit for this. There were several different organizations from each of these countries that are experts in international expansion that were actually organizing the programs themselves. And the final selection of who got to be in the program was made together as a partner board. And there were also 3 different hubs in the city of The Hague that actually facilitated physical meetings that were happening. And there were organizations that specialized in subsidies or in access to funding that were taking part in special knowledge sharing experience. So there were this program, while it sounds really simple, it was really a 3-month program. It is just in progress right now. This is done with 10 different organizations that were the support system for this entire thing. And what we've also seen in the previous versions, it was done in the same model, is that over 70% of the companies that took part in the program were successfully able to expand to these countries. Yeah. On the other side, we are also organizing digital soft landing programs. This is inbound to the Netherlands at this point of time. And we want to create this sort of programs also for different countries. An example that we're implementing right now is around a theme of agriculture and food technology. This is a program that is jointly supported by Innovation Quarter and the Hague Business Agency in the Netherlands. And we're working together with the Dutch consulate in India, specifically trying to onboard 10 companies from India that are ready to explore an expansion towards the Netherlands. And we're creating a 1.5-month program. And by the end result of that 1.5 months, the entrepreneurs will be able to clearly answer the question if the Netherlands is a country they should be expanding to. In here, what is also interesting is that we are doing the program part and the training part. Again, the selection is something that we're doing together as a partner board. And in India, we have two organizations, Think Ag and CCamp, that are actually doing the sourcing and the selection bit. So this is the kind of collaboration that we're working on at this moment for these sort of programs. Now, the Dutch Coalition for Humanitarian Innovation is an association that is bringing together all the largest humanitarian-oriented NGOs. Think about CARE International, think about Red Cross, think about UNDP or WWF, these sort of organizations. We have done a program together with these organizations. Each of those organizations were facilitating one company, one organization to implement their own business plan in a country abroad. And most of these countries were based in Africa and a few in Latin America. Another example of collaboration that we did is something called as a Capital Tour. Now, Capital Tour is perhaps one of the largest matchmaking event that happens in the Netherlands for entrepreneurs and investors. And we try to do this in an intimate setting to also bring down the barriers of this weight of conversation with investors. The way that we did this, and this is pre-corona times, and we are looking to do a version that is very similar to this in the last quarter of this year. We had about 75, 80 investors sitting in 3 different bars in Amsterdam. And we had 150 entrepreneurs biking from one bar to another one to have conversations with these entrepreneurs. Now, to create that sort of intimacy, but also not being just within 4 walls where you had to do a presentation to impress an investor, but to break that barrier and make it a conversation. And to actually, we also do this together with most of the venture capitals and the angel investor networks that we have in the Netherlands. But we also collaborate together with all the local entrepreneur support organizations as well, and we make it easier for them to participate in such a program. And the last case study I'd like to present is a fund called the Dutch Fund for Climate and Development. This is a 116 million euro fund set up by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This fund is being managed by 4 different organizations. So here, perhaps also looking into the power of collaboration. The way this fund is set up is there is a origination facility kind of a grant, which is to enable projects to start up and do their feasibility studies. And then there is another part, which is the actual facility, that is the investment facility. And this is to enable organizations to take debts or equity or blended finance investments into their into these projects. It was set up in 3 different stages. The first stage was 40,000 euros of a technical assistance grant. The second stage is a development grant for feasibility studies. And the third stage is the actual investments that we're speaking of, which could be a couple of million. Now, what was done very nicely in this setup is the first and the second stage were taken up by 2 organizations, namely the WWF and SNB, who are a lot better at structuring projects and providing them on the ground support. They were helping with the technical assistance and the development grant phase. And then FMO and the climate fund managers. These are investment entities that are used to doing large investments. They were the ones that were tackling the final round of the financing facilities. So far, over 20 projects have received financing from this fund in different stages. And right now we are helping them with sourcing the right kind of companies and evaluating the companies that can actually take part within the fund. At the moment, we are working on making this a much larger fund. Our ambition is to make this a 500 million euro fund. So these are 3 different use cases. Perhaps it was plenty of information to go into in a short period of time, but I hope I gave you somewhat of an impression of what we've been doing at World Startup and some use cases that we have found useful when working in collaborations. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that I would like to add, Martijn, as you mentioned in the beginning, we have founded World Startup in 2015. We started out as a sort of regular accelerator, investing 15, 20K, getting a percentage of shares, etc. And over time, we saw that there were a lot of accelerators and that the business models of the accelerators are not always right in that perspective. We were already started as an impact investor in those days, pretty early. And we did start pivoting, I think, in time to move from the acceleratorship to more of an entrepreneurial platform where we can reach and support and touch much more companies. Because if you just run a program, indeed, you have 10 companies in a cohort and you drop them after 6 months. And as Aditya mentioned, you probably need a few years to really get them going. And with the programs we run together also with other organizations, we can touch much more companies on a yearly basis that get affected and can really go because they have access to the market, have access to capital and stuff like that. So I think now it's more an entrepreneurial platform where it's still key to have companies grow, but it's not just the money and a little time of support, but the much more integrated support system, of which is capital just one of the ingredients we can provide in the whole picture. So we have been a startup too. We have been pivoting, and we think we're now on the right track of touching a lot of companies and combining a lot of stuff to let them grow and still have a viable business model, and also trying to have the companies work together. As Aditya mentioned, the collective fund where we put some shares in a fund where they all are the owner of, that also is a very interesting thing to see. We have like once a month a session where one of the companies can present one of their problems, the other companies join in that meetings. And it's amazing what comes out of those meetings if people are interconnected with the companies. And sometimes the cross-sell within the companies is also interesting to see. As the number of companies in the network and the portfolio grows, we can make also nice connections between the companies. If the company needs a certain software or something for tracking and tracing, we have one great company for tracking and tracing. Another company has a real nice goal of having exchanging goats for water or whatever, and they want to trace their meat also. Yeah, and we connect them, and that's also nice. Not just one company, but the network.
Great, thank you, Jan, and also thank you, Aditya, for the great presentation. While the questions are popping up already in the chat box, I would like before going there and opening up to the room, I have one question. You've been touching upon it a bit already there, Jan. In the last sentence, when you started, you were more of a typical accelerator model and also investing in the companies. So this question entails a couple of questions, to be honest. So at the time, you were also investing in building your own portfolio. Although that the business model didn't work out, it was quite an interesting model, I thought, with investment BVs. Maybe you can elaborate a bit on that, because I think it's an interesting model still to share with the group.
I think.
And before going there, the second question of the big question is also you now have a different way of working with investors, and this session is also about collaboration between those organizations that support startups and impact companies and the impact investors. And how do you approach it now, and what did you learn, and what did you pivot in the project? Would be nice to learn.
Yeah, starting back at how we started with the investment, I think the basic idea came also a little bit from our old days, Martijn, at the Investors Club, where we also sometimes joined forces to invest in companies. As you can remember, we joined forces with 3, 4, and in one project even with 7 private investors to invest in one company. That basic idea, I think, is we took also along in the first Invest BVs. We said, hey, we want to do a cohort. We need at least 200,000-300,000 euros to invest in a number of companies. How are we going to do that? Well, let's call our friends and see if they want to join in the idea that we have. So we sort of started out by raising 200,000-300,000 euros from private investors. We got some money from the local government, the city of The Hague. They participated, and they were even surprised that we refused to have them be a large investor in the fund, because we said we want the private investors on board because they have the network to bring business and stuff like that. So that was, for the local government, very strange that we said we don't want all your money. It's a sort of interesting thing from that era. And then we could run a cohort of companies on a certain theme. We did that a number of times. So that worked at the end of the day pretty well. The third, fourth fund was easier to get done than the first one. People knew what we were doing. They were seeing what we were doing. So that went nice. Then when we started pivoting, we said, well, the money isn't the key thing. We did see that we lost most of the companies, the investments, within the first 3 to 6 months, because all kinds of reasons the companies fail. There was a fight between the founders. After some research about product market fit, they came to the conclusion, oh, it doesn't work. People didn't sell fast enough. We had one promising company with a lot of MBAs who had to start paying back their tuition fees. So when they failed to get money raised within 6 months, they had to start a regular job because they couldn't else pay their tuition fees back. So all kinds of reasons companies failed in very early stage. So we said, well, so the investment is not the key thing. It's more about selection, support, etc. And all that kind of stuff sort of contributed to the idea we have to sort of shift away from just the investment and a basic program. And at the end, a demo day, that's not enough. It has to be longer, broader, and more interconnected. Siri is talking again. So that's why we sort of pivoted to say it must be more an entrepreneurial platform where we can plug in a number of services, and then funding is just one of the services of the total solution we're trying to offer. And if we have companies in the program who we have been working with for a while, we also more easily can introduce them to investors because we know the company, we've seen what they're doing, we've seen their progress in a number of months. So we sort of even refuse to bring them to investors within the first few months because they still have to learn a lot or whatever. So the money is not always key. and that's what you see a lot of times happening with the companies. They join programs, they go to investors just for the funding, and it should be broader and more collaborative and market ready and that kind of stuff. So we approach it also more as a total, and it's not just about the money. It's about more about impact and working together, the market, etc. So in that shift, we also changed a bit, saying, hey, it must be more holistic approach and a longer time frame approach. So I think that helped in that whole pivot from being a standard accelerator to that entrepreneurial platform. And indeed, one of the questions is, how many more companies did you touch? I think in the beginning, we run one program per year with 10 companies or 2 programs per year. And now we can, with all the stuff we do, we can reach 25 to 50 companies a year, which we can really support, or through the programs we run that get funded. Like Aditya mentioned, the FCD companies get funded.
Yeah. So maybe I can shed some light on that, because there was also a question in the chat, I think. So there are indeed, usually around 35 to 50 companies that take part within our own programs. This is either direct services from us or to become part of our portfolio. We are also doing programs for a couple of corporates or governmental organizations or NGOs. Through that, we are reaching around 150 companies per year. And then, we have a couple of, like the DFC fund. Last year, we touched over 200 companies to evaluate for that. And when we do an event like Capital Tour, we work with around 150 162 startups. So we're touching a couple of 100 startups every year, and we're able to do this because of this pivot, and otherwise it would not be possible.
Yeah, and we also actively promote that all kinds of organizations who are involved with startups, we are not competition, but doing stuff together. I think the city of The Hague, with projects like Impact City, where a number of organizations work together to organize one big event, where a lot of people and companies are around, is also a nice example of what's happening, at least in The Hague, that we don't see each other as competition, but more as helping each other by making sure more companies get support or whatever. So I think that's also a nice development, not in The Hague, but probably a bit broader, that there's a general feeling, hey, we have to work together to get things done. And indeed trying to get out of the silos and work together on projects. And if organizations and companies have that mindset, that it's not always competition. In The Hague, in the same building is Yes Delft, and the companies that are there, we talk with them also. It's not competition, but it's doing it together and making the cross connections.
Yeah, great. We also have a great partnership with Impact City indeed. So good to know and good to see that happening indeed. How do you work with other investors? Was the second question, because you relate to funds and you relate to individual investors, and how have you structured that in the new pivot? And then I really open up to the room.
Yeah, I think the opening up is indeed, we have already from the past a decent group of investors who were in Invest BV, so they are approached for new projects. We have been building quite a database of connections of investors and figuring out where they fit best in the phase our companies are in. So we're building a network of investors. We're having regular presentations, and we're also helping companies on an individual level with finding the right investor. It's now become more of a service to say, hey, we help you find the right investor. So that's also a mix of having an existing network and expanding the network and providing also a bit more support where needed in finding investors. Some companies say, hey, we can do that on our own. Other ones, especially the ones coming from abroad, say, hey, we would like some help to find the right investor, and then we can also help them prepare in the right way before we put them in front of an investor or an event.
Maybe Martin, if I can add to that. So we are also trying to engage investors and funds a little bit differently since the model has changed. We're trying to bring them a little bit also behind the scenes. Actually, right before we came to this session, we had a workshop where we had mock interviews with entrepreneurs and investors. And we asked the investors to not just put on their investor hat, but also to put on their funding experts hat. So to really help them on a much deeper level. And otherwise, investors, when investor puts on an investor hat, he's just looking for, are these guys impressive enough for an investment opportunity? And they're not thinking about much more. So we're doing that, and we also organizing something called as the Impact Capital Roundtables, where we're actually bringing together a couple of investors, funders, but also capital experts to sit together with entrepreneurs and to think along with them what is the right strategy, what can be the approach, how can they be helpful. And then we continue to organize the larger matchmaking events like the Capital Tour. For some funds or investors, it's actually interesting for us to help them with sourcing. For some, it's actually interesting that we help them manage their inbox because they get tons of entrepreneurs that are interested to get in touch with them. Usually funds, VCs, they have, most of them have small teams of 5 people, 10 people. They don't have this capacity to handle these sort of things. So we actually help them offload that capacity as well. These are different models.
Great. That last one is actually quite interesting, but it's something that I hear a lot with the small teams of the impact funds and the initiative at the VPA as well. Getting hundreds of emails in and not being able to go through them all, or if you're able to go through them all, not able to answer them all. So that's a big thing, and also makes sense, Aditya, and I think it was very insightful to get investors think differently in how they look at entrepreneurs, because you often see that you get a different conversation, and from the different conversation you also get more alignment between entrepreneurs, and people are more willing to think along, and that's better for trust and relationship often than the head-to-head start at pitches with dragons in chairs kind of setup. Chiara, I saw you had some questions in the chat. Can I briefly hand over to you, maybe?
Yes. So thank you very much for the presentation. I found it very interesting. Took notes of a few things to bring back to the EBN network, and some common elements about, for example, the platform dimension, this ecosystem. Now you are bringing together. I was interested in understanding a bit more about the innovation hubs service you were mentioning. If I well understood, these are for each entrepreneur or for the entrepreneurial projects. You help them developing these hubs, right? Can you tell a bit more?
Yeah, it's usually concentrated around certain themes like urban innovation. We have one at this point in time for aviation, and so there are a number of items. Sometimes the innovation hub can be with a number of partners who come up with a question saying, hey, how can we improve aviation on an impact level? And we work together with an airport and some other partners, and it's an innovation hub on a certain theme. But we're also trying to set up innovation hubs, for example, with partners abroad, where we can reuse knowledge we already acquired in the Netherlands or in Europe to use that in other regions, because companies don't always need to move to the Netherlands or to Europe to grow or get training or support or funding. We can also use sort of the programs to at other places that can then be a more general innovation hub. So it's depending a bit on the language people use and what to do. And one part, the innovation hubs are theme oriented, especially what we do, but we're also working on setting up innovation hubs with partners abroad where we can reuse our knowledge or our programs to have impact in other places.
Yeah, maybe one specific example for you, Chiara, is we're doing a HortiTech program together with an organization called Greenport, West Holland. This is a consortium of organizations in the HortiTech field in the west of Netherlands. And so these are larger organizations, right? I'm not talking about like the Privas and the Delphi's and the big ones in the Netherlands. For one, some of these organizations are looking to be entrepreneurial or to set up their own organization structures to be able to work with more innovative entrepreneurial ideas. So in some cases, we are trying to facilitate, again, together with other partners, the sort of sessions that can help them set up this way. In some cases, I believe this was last year, we came up with a list of 6 challenges that this consortium was trying to solve as a whole. And we found entrepreneurs that were able to contribute towards those challenges. And in some cases, 1 or 2 of these organizations, they were looking to acquire some of these companies to be able to solve these challenges, but some of them are just looking to be either resellers or looking to integrate this into their models. So by working on this hubs model, we are able to understand the challenges and the direction they're heading a bit more holistically, and that has been helpful. Again, it needs a lot more resources to actually make this whole thing work. That is another topic. But so far, we are learning that this model, in the end, what we also said, ventures first. For the ventures first philosophy, this has been working better.
Thank you very much. And then the second point was, I saw your scaling programs, internationalization programs, and we launched the Better Incubation Contest, scaling up, scaling impact. And why not? Maybe some of the participants to that program might be interested in exploring again this potential collaboration of EBN, EVPA, Impact Hub members to scale up elsewhere in Europe or other countries related to the program we are part of.
Absolutely.
So have a look if interested. Happy to provide with more information.
We'd definitely love to do that. Every month we are working on so many proposals we work on as well. We try to work on together in consortium. We try to do things together. So that would be helpful, yeah.
And you have some experience with, I don't know if that's the same, but with soft landing programs as well, right? I think you mentioned it in the presentation.
Yeah.
Can you give a brief example of that, or how that works, or how you're working together with these entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I don't think I can share the current program yet, or I'm not allowed to share it yet. We have one starting in September this year. This is between India and the Netherlands. So we are working with 2 organizations in India that are helping source companies, and that are ready for international expansion and considering Netherlands. And we're going to be talking to around 50 companies and end up with 10 to 12 companies within the program itself. And once they're selected, and this is going to be together with the partner board, we're going to do an online program. So usually a company would spend a couple of €1,000, maybe even a couple of €100,000 if they're a bigger company, to send a couple of their employees to live in the Netherlands for a few months to talk to clients, to do some market validation. And that's can be a costly experience. And we actually, interestingly enough, we moved to this digital soft landing program because, well, entrepreneurs couldn't travel in COVID times. So we're like, okay, let's still do something. And then we started doing this online. So we were able to give them insights into the usual things like the subsidies and taxes and blah, 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 all these regular things. But we were also able to help them put together a clear validation question and facilitate a community that is able to help answer that validation question for them. And the challenge then is to try and do that in a month and a half time and do that online. What we understood is that if we have specific validation question and if they speak to 5 to 10 organizations within that space, they're usually able to answer that question. So the challenge is to do it within that time frame and to help them have these conversations with the right organizations and facilitating that online. And so this is a sponsored program. So it's also easier for entrepreneurs to step into that environment. And within a month and a half, 2 months, most of these guys, they get the answer. And even if they decide it's not the right expansion plan, well, that's also successful.
And we can also help companies really relocate to the Netherlands. We're an accredited partner to ask for startup visa to the IND and stuff like that. So we also can offer that whole trajectory for getting to the Netherlands, because you need a lot of paperwork, visa, etc. We have a organized process for that. We are recognized as from our time also as an accelerator to give out, not give out, but recommend people for getting a startup visa, and all that stuff helps to get companies landed pretty quickly.
And once again, companies that take part within these programs, they don't all have to end up in our portfolio. No. Some of them also went to Yes Delft, or they went to Impact City, or they went to other programs. That's also absolutely fine.
Yes, and that's the community approach again. Thank you very much. I see your question, Chara, and I do think we have time for it. But before giving you the word, I would like to thank all those in the call that really want to leave at 1. So if I really thank you for joining, and we will be recording. I would recommend to stay for the question of Chara, so you can follow it. But I wanted to be before 1 o'clock to thank you all before moving on. So please, Chara.
It's really quick. It's a clarification. Also, for the soft landing program is still impact-driven projects, ventures you are working with, looking for, right? Okay.
Yes.
Then we could speak more. I would have more questions, but maybe for another occasion. Thank you.
Great. With that, I thank you for the presentation. I thank you for joining. I'd like to hand over briefly to Sarah. I think you have some last notes for everyone.
This is really quick. I wanted to share what Kara already did, which is the better incubation context. So I think that I will just keep it. Oh, sorry, no. Current slide. So, yeah. So this is just to say there is a series of these 3 speeches. So we would like you to join the others, because this will all be interesting conversation. Thank you for being the first ones. This is the contest, so I'll leave the slide so we can still have the details. And the deadline for application is the 22nd of August. And the winners will be pitching at the EVPA Impact Week in front of social investors. So here we will have the final Better Incubation event. So we really hope to see you there.
We don't see the last slide, though.
Don't worry. I think you can.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. I will start the registration.